Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, everybody. This is Aaron. This is
Landon.
You're what city in Indiana are you? Do you live in? Northern Indiana? Middle?
Sales.
Is that Southern? Oh, okay. Oh, because you are near Nevability Camp then? Okay. How far are you from DeCoin?
4 hours.
Oh.
We're more towards Cincinnati.
Okay, so you're southeast.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know that I've been there a couple of times, and it's just a long drive, I think, from anywhere you come to get to that area.
Yep.
So Landon has tibial hemimelia, had a surgery at a pretty young age, I'm assuming. How old?
16 months.
16 months, yeah. Okay, that sounds about right. You also have some polydactyly, right? Your hands there, hold your hands up for us. So have some webbing of some fingers here. And then some polydactyly on your foot over here too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not.
Web toes.
Yeah, well, actually, I have web toes on both feet too, but that's a whole separate issue.
And then big toe.
Fortunately, only one of my daughters ended up with that, so that's a good one. So there weren't any real functional implications for the hand at first until we got to talking a little more. So he is previously, I guess you've always used liners, Landon? Have you had different ones besides this strap on the side?
Yes.
You had some with like a pin on the bottom?
Yeah, pin on the bottom.
What else do you remember?
That's
Do you have any
one.
with a ring around them?
The
No?
pin one had like 3 on it, but yeah.
Okay. So that's pretty normal for what we see. He did have this Blade XT foot, which is sort of like a sports foot, kind of a hybrid model. We've used this before in the past. Just for us, it hasn't been a real responsive foot, more of a energy absorbing foot. That's just been our experience. So we don't use a lot of these. It's also a little bit heavier. I'm not sure what the layups are with this foot, but it's a little bit heavier type of setup. But good idea. So he had a surgery done a year and a half ago, which we see a lot of trying to arrest the growth plates. I would just reiterate with anybody watching the video that we always discourage that because it's just not necessary to cosmetically match up your knee center, because typically when you arrest the growth plates, you don't just stop longitudinal growth, you also stop growth altogether. And so you really need this remaining knee. With tibial hemimelia, he had a kind of normal case too. What happens is the tibia bifurcates about halfway down, and each condyle grows off a separate femur. So you kind of end up with a bone that looks like this, and they end up cutting one side off, and you end up with one condyle. So you don't get as much condylar suspension. This is more like a maze with the condyles trimmed down. But you can still get easy suspension over the skin. It's a very simple formula to do, and we've got that to where it's pretty repeatable, to where I can teach residents pretty easily how to do that. So he had that bifurcation, had one of the condyles removed, and then they were arresting the growth plates to, I think what my understanding was, is to keep the cosmetics good. So we typically do not make decisions based on cosmetics, and I don't think that was a concern for them. Most studies will tell you that the knee center can be off by as much as 2.5 inches. It doesn't really make any difference with gait parameters. And ultimately it's function, meaning their mobility and where they can weight bear. So if you keep arresting the growth plate, you don't only stop the longitudinal growth, you stop the linear growth too. So when somebody's 40 pounds, putting weight on a 2-inch pedestal is not a big deal. But if he grows up to be a 200-pound person and he's trying to weight bear on a 2-inch pedestal, that's a lot harder than weight bearing on a 4-inch pedestal. So that's why we don't want to arrest the growth plates, because there are so many advancements in technology down here to make room for stuff. It's just not worth the sacrifice of that. Now, it makes sense that people consider that when they use this, because when they use these liners, you end up adding the liner and adding a lock potentially, which can put the knee like 2.5 inches below where the other knee is. Plus they used a connector that you don't have to use. You can just build that connector into here where you screw the knee straight into the foot. So all this could have been removed and the knee could have been put right here. So there's a lot of ways to remedy that versus doing surgery on this kid. You could have saved yourself an inch by just putting this knee here. So that's just, that's just something that's confusing for parents and don't know what questions to ask sometimes. We have very technically savvy parents, or sometimes we don't, and we have to make them technically savvy, because what we tell the parents is they're going to be as independent as you are with a prosthesis. And if you are completely dependent on somebody else to do everything, they will grow up to be completely dependent on someone else to do everything. So we want to role model something better for them. So now with what he's in, his knee center is pretty much the same. Feed video from over there, Seth. You can see this is pretty much the same. There's not a whole lot of difference here. Right into here. So we have tibial. We had what we had that we struggled with this week wasn't the weight-bearing distally, but he had an abscess form when an internal stitch tried to pop through the skin. When that internal stitch comes through the skin, it goes through all the layers of the fascia, the deep dermis, the epidermis, and the epithelial skin. And so that kind of tunneling wound through there creates scar tissue, which makes that scar from that abscess closing up, pulls all those layers together and doesn't let them slide anymore. And it can be hard to work through that if you don't know what you're looking for, and you could abandon this system. So you got to have buy-in, because we treat patients longitudinally. So what we're trying to look at is not really what's good today or tomorrow, but what's good in 18 years from now. And so the more weight bearing he can put through his leg without retarding the skeletal stimulation because of this gel liner, his bone density will be significantly improved. So we will follow up on that in a year, but that's consistently what we've seen probably at least 80 times now. So once you slide this off, Landon, we'll show them what we're talking about. So I'm going to show you how to diagnose a skin issue versus a bone issue. It's an easy test. Landon won't like it, but we'll do it anyway. Let's see, slide out to the edge there, buddy. Okay, so with his old system, he's still dealing with some of this right here. So he had a lot of these pimples and infected hair follicles pop up. And I attribute that to a lot of, I assume it was very sweaty in your leg a lot. Yeah. And that's typically what we would see. We tell people, my speech on that is you have 3 ways to get rid of waste from your body. You can pee, poop, or sweat. So sweat is just like pee sitting on your skin all day. So you can fill in the blanks on the rest of that. So this is actually getting a little softer. I would say this feels a little better than it did when you came in, a lot of this here. You've still got some of these little hair follicles here that are a little mad right now. But you turn this way for me, buddy. Okay, so what you'll see here is he's got if Seth comes in, I believe, Mom, that's the little scar right there?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so at first it was a little uncomfortable, kind of all over, and Landon would sort of point to this area. Okay, and then it got a little closer, and it was this area. And then I told the parents, well, why don't you leave for a day, go do a bunch of stuff, and your only job is to pinpoint the one spot that bothers you, because we've got to narrow this down. If it truly is everything, then we got a different problem. If it's one spot, I can figure out what that is. So if I will show you this, it will be easier to visualize. There's the spot. That's where the little scar is. That's where the abscess was, and anytime you have an abscess, it would have been something that occurred probably a few weeks after the initial surgery. So that meant it was in there festering for a long time, and then it continues, so it's a much more sensitive scar site because it's a longer term problem. So what he was telling me is basically when I would, he knows what I'm about to do, so here.
Wow.
So what I would tell him is that's the part that would bother you, right?
Yeah.
And then what you'll do is, okay, is that in the skin or the bone? So then I would move this like this, and I would try to say, is that the part that bothers you, or is that the part that bothers you? So this is the part that bothers you right here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Does this part bother you?
No.
Okay, and then I'll put this back. So what happens is I'm pushing on this area. Now again, I'm going to move it out of the way, and I'm going to push here. Does that bother you, Landon?
No.
Okay. Does that bother you?
Yes.
So what you're seeing there is I can move this away and rub the underlying bone, and it tolerates pressure. But when I move that away, it bothers him whether it's here or here, which tells me it's in the skin because it moves around. And that's a good sign. And believe it or not, even though he's jumpy, that's a good sign because that can be eliminated with scar massage. And he didn't have it in this system, and that's because this liner uses a kind of aloe vera and mineral oil impregnated gel, which will basically hide this. But it obviously wasn't getting any better because when you take it off and still press on it right now, it hurts, even though he's been using this for, I guess, a year or so. But so the first day it bothered you, and does it bother you a little less the next couple of days?
Yes, a little bit less every day.
Yeah, so that's what I would expect to hear. The parents want to do everything they can to make it better, which is totally normal. But I did tell them it might just go away on its own from just wearing the leg if you can, continue to encourage him. And usually he will, because this is lighter and faster, so he wants to use it. And he'll basically do his own scar massage, because this flexible plastic will do some of that scar massage. Now, this is pretty typical for us with all Needus articulation amputees. The lateral condyle has a pointed edge, and the medial condyle of your bone, if you just do gross anatomy or look at a skeleton, the medial condyle is very rounded. The lateral condyle is pretty sharp. You can even feel your own, usually, the roundness. So typically we're going to have a lateral cutout regardless of a skin issue anyway. So we may not have needed it though, because I did build in a pad, and we probably misdiagnosed this to start. So in the future we can make this even lighter. If he reinforced it to have a cutout, but he could have cut down on the amount of material if we knew we didn't have to reinforce it for a cutout. So either way, we just went with the nuclear option. So we had both options when we made that. So would you say this is easier to get on than your old leg?
Yeah, definitely. It's quicker.
Could you put your old leg on by yourself?
No, I'd have to have somebody fold the liner because my hands weren't strong enough.
Did you like that?
No, not really, because if I was at like a friend's house or something, I'd have to have their mom or dad do it.
Yeah.
Because it would take me, if I would even be able to get it, it'd take me 5-10 minutes to just fold that.
Yeah, and so I think it's all those little things that people don't consider when they're doing stuff, because that's really a developmental thing. And we want to foster independence, not dependence, and that's kind of contributes to a self-esteem issue as well, with maybe not wanting to go put myself out there because I might not be able to do the things I need to help myself is going to make me limit my circle of what I expose myself to. And the parents have told me they had to let certain parents know and had to make sure they knew how to put it on. And that's just an added stress that doesn't even need to occur. So not only is it heavier, sweatier, he can't put it on himself, so it really doesn't make a lot of sense from that perspective. So I think sometimes in prosthetics with children, what I would encourage people to do is just revisit your goal setting and have a real good discussion about options. Because typically what I tell families is just go in and ask for at least 2 to 3 ways to hold your leg on. And if somebody can't give you 3 ways to hold your prosthesis on, then probably need to see someone else or do some research, because there's always more than one way to hold your leg on. So the other good thing is usually this will last a long time. So typically around his age, we would expect to get at least a year, maybe 2 years out of something like this. Once he is around 15 or 16, maybe 17, we would probably expect to get more like 4 or 5 years out of this. Definitely at skeletal maturity. I had you guys talk to another girl here who had hers about 5 years. So at that point, it's just how long will it last before you break something. And then it becomes a maintenance thing with valves. So we'll show them how to replace the valve, clean the valve out. He's pretty good with just using hand sanitizer. So I'm gonna have him show you how he puts his leg on here. Wish I had my phone on time to see how fast you do it.
Pretty good. Fast.
I got time.
And usually people can get to where they don't need to put anything on. The pigment of their skin will tell you a lot about that. The darker pigment skin can tolerate usually putting it on without anything. He's already got himself some underwear. I'm sure he'll find some even better ones along the way, and just let us know what you guys notice works good. We can pass that along to other families. We keep some here, and so that's it. He's got his leg on. So as long as he's got hand sanitizer, possibly even water, possibly even just spit, he can put his leg on by himself. So it just depends on where you're at. You never know if you might be camping and you just can't put the extra hand sanitizer in there, and you just have to. What do you think about? Because I can say all the stuff I want to say, but what do you think is better about your current leg than your old leg?
Really, probably the biggest thing with, I know I have 2 different foots now. I did.
That would be
then.
feet.
Feet.
Yeah, foots.
Foot.
Yeah. So he can. What he's saying is he can swap this out too. He's got a sports foot that we custom made with a waterproof cover on here. And do you know which bolt you take out to put it on?
Is it that one?
That's right, yep. So you just loosen this bolt, slide that one off, slide this one on, turn it where you want it, and he's good to go. So,
And really probably the main difference is really big is weight. And then with this one, spring a lot. You don't get much of a heel here, you don't get any heel here, but with that one you can get more heel.
and you said this one felt a little stiff, right?
That one is a little
So my next move on this that I was going to do before he leaves is you can take about a 1/4 inch out from each side, and that will take it down one category. So I'm going to do that before he leaves to thin this down, and that one should make it significantly more flexible. I know John didn't want me to say that from them, but you can't do that. You should do it with the right tools to do that. So are you saying that this is bouncier?
This is a bit, probably a lot bouncier, I should probably say.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still gotta get used to it because I think it has a lot more bounce than what I'm getting right now.
Oh, yeah.
It
See that you have adopted the right mindset?
And then compared to this one, still right now, I couldn't like jump on it and have it keep on bouncing.
Mm-hmm.
I would jump on it and then bounce like once, and then it just kind of just stand there, and you'd have to like pull it up. But with this one, I feel like it would just go like that movement, and it will just bounce me back up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on getting off of that, but until
Well, the big thing I see that you've improved this week is you've improved your prosthetic vocabulary. So that's really important because if you're going to go to Spain, you need to know how to speak Spanish. And see, you're going to spend your life in prosthetic land, and you need to learn how to speak prosthetic. So part of what you've learned, I can tell over the past 2 days, is just learning how to verbalize certain things. And that will help you more than anything because may get run over by a bus tomorrow, and you need to be able to know how to speak to somebody else to tell them what you need. And I would want you to not feel trapped by having to have me to come to, but be able to go anywhere and tell them what you needed. And you can only do that if you know what you need. And you've learned a significant part of that, and I think your parents will continue to teach you as they learn themselves too, to where you can navigate that for yourself.
yeah.